On November 22nd, 2024, DJ Khaled appeared on The Tonight Show to sit down with Jimmy Fallon for a special pre-birthday appearance. They shared the usual useless drivel that typically serves as a commercial for whatever project most celebrities come to plug before the actual commercial break. But right before they could cut to ads, something unexpected happened.
Also, I want to say happy early birthday to you, because it almost is your birthday.
Yes.
DJ Khaled was in the middle of explaining some of his birthday plans with his family, and Jimmy, on cue with the setup, brought up his favorite dish. Khaled would explain that his favorite food is an Arabic cuisine called maklube. Much to his surprise and completely at random, Jimmy happened to have a plate of maklube already there as a gift, and in a touching moment of TV dry-jacking, they would light a candle and share some of the delicious dish together.
Yeah, there you go.
Classic, wholesome TV goodness. Then, of course, the mandatory plug for what is not a commercial break because it happened before the commercials, and everyone goes happy, well-fed, and filled with joy. And what if I told you this was one of the most haunting moments ever performed on live television?
Jimmy Fallon. You got me.
So, on paper, I should really like Jimmy Fallon. He joined the cast of SNL at the end of what is considered to be the second golden era of the show, and I was a teenager just at the right time at the right place. While the OG cast is considered the greatest of all time, and for good reason, a few decades would pass until the stars aligned to feature some of the funniest comedians in history bumping jokes and cowbells off each other. Will Ferrell, Mike Myers, Chris Farley, Phil Hartman, Adam Sandler, Molly Shannon, Daryl Hammond, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Tracy Morgan. These are all household names now, well established in the annals of laugh history. The 90s saw not one but two of the greatest collections of cast members in not only the show's history, but human history. And right at the tail end of the Matt Foley living by a van down by the river and Adam Sandler singing about lunch meat entered Jimmy Fallon, who oversaw the transition from the Will Ferrell era into the Tina Fey one. Standing there awkwardly in the background with very few lines as new cast members often have, there wasn't much to think about Jimmy. In a few seconds, Will Ferrell would perform one of the most iconic comedy routines of all time, and Fallon's contribution to the entire moment is nearly ruining it by breaking. Who was this feckless? But see, on paper it would make sense for me to love him. He was, as I mentioned, a part of the iconic era of SNL. He picked one of my favorite musical groups to be his in-house band. Much of the sketches he does with celebrities involve nostalgic activities that are sure to stimulate whatever section of the brain makes you stop having existential dread about climate change, because you remember a simpler time where 4 controllers and a few good friends would see if they could go the entire night throwing bananas and red shells at each other, even without the use of cocaine. But there was something about Jimmy that always rubbed me the wrong way. Something profoundly evil about him.
Why did I give him that whip for his birthday?
Always treat the customers with...
Who needs to laugh that much? And at what? What was he hiding behind his dead, soulless eyes and goofy face? One of those nice guys who gives nice guys a bad name. The ones who tell your sister to avoid dating because behind the veil of giggles, he seems like someone who wears his own mother's skin as a cape and sleeps in a jar of his own urine. And this was a lifelong thing for me. I always hated him. Certified lifelong hater. I had friends who would look at me like I'm insane, as if, how could anyone hate someone so wholesome? That would be like hating Mr. Rogers or LeVar Burton.
I'm a huge fan of bread, are you kidding me? Before a meal? I know, all those carbs, it's the best, so bready. So bready.
But I never thought of LeVar Burton or Mr. Rogers as the kind of people who could wear a mother cape.
I don't come to where you work and knock the corn dog out of your hand.
Jimmy Fallon doesn't seem on the surface like a bad guy. He's a nice guy. A man who is considered too wholesome for late-night television. Even though he's now become a fixture of the Big Four, most people associate him with a goofy smile and a good heart. Not quite as nerdy as Seth Meyers, not as crude as Jimmy Kimmel, not as classic as Stephen Colbert, but just right. A veritable porridge of childhood nostalgia, inexplicably more talented co-hosts, and awkward moments with celebrities. For a man who has everything, it's impossible to escape the feeling that he's earned nothing, which isn't fair because, unlike a lot of people in entertainment, he's not a nepo baby. He didn't come from extreme wealth, and his parents never provided any notable advantages to him. He is a classical comedian tale of hard work and climbing the stand-up ladder until you become the rare star that shines bright enough to become a diamond. He moved to LA in the mid-1990s to pursue a career in comedy, and spent years grinding at famous comedy clubs like the Improv and the Laugh Factory.
Trying to hook me up, man. We're going bar hopping, Trying to pick up some girls. And some of my friends are under 21 years old, so you have to use a fake ID. Like a fake, even if it doesn't look anything like you, yeah, this looks just like you, Fred. Yeah, just trust me. Wear the turban. Yeah, let's give it a shot.
He had spent countless hours as a child watching hours and hours of Saturday Night Live and listening to Adam Sandler doing endless mimicking and sketches of his cadence.
Do Adam Sandler.
Through this, he became notable for his impression skills on the stand-up stage.
Okay, people, okay. We look at these things. Why don't the arms and legs move?
Eventually, he would land an agent, a crucial first step in making it in the biz, and that brought him to the coveted floors of 30 Rockefeller Plaza to stand before Lorne Michaels like so many of the legends he worshipped before him had stood. The big break, as they say. The Saturday Night Live audition. Which he totally and completely bombed. While there's no recording of it that exists today, it was remarkable for being unremarkable. Simply not funny enough for what the team was looking for at the time, and his dreams were crushed as quickly as they were staring him through his soulless eyes. This, unfortunately, wasn't the last we'd see of him, however, and he even strangely enough landed a second audition that apparently he absolutely crushed, through the use of blackface.
Why can't a black man walk around, try to do a walkathon? Man, I get scared, try to walk on the crack. Step on a crack, break your mama's back.
Okay, that's not entirely fair. He didn't actually wear any makeup, but he did debut his impression of Chris Rock, and his routine even made Lorne Michaels laugh, something that's extremely rare in SNL auditions.
The audition, did you think you'd never get the job, or did you think he killed?
Well, did Lorne laugh, by the way?
Yeah, you know what I did? I ended up doing Adam Sandler.
Oh.
In the audition, and I remember him laughing.
There, he got to stand shoulder to shoulder with the very giants that inspired him, meeting virtually every single comedian he ever considered a hero, and in many ways accomplishing something that few people have done. How many folk actually get to live their exact dream they've wanted to their entire lives through hard work and perseverance, and then make it a reality?
So, cards on the table, you know how some people tell you that you look just like a celebrity? You really remind me of so-and-so, such and such. And for me, 95% of the time, it's usually Brendan Fraser, which I've totally made peace with. I'm totally fine with now at this point.
From going from making some of the biggest trash in cinema to reinventing himself as an Academy Award-winning artist. He's a survivor, an outspoken advocate against abuse. So no, I don't take it the wrong way.
But 5% of the time, someone says Jimmy Fallon.
And then my face goes blank. Not out of me manipulating it to look like that, but because maybe on some spiritual level, a small part of my soul is leaving my body. I never used to be able to properly articulate why, but stick with me on this journey because I think we'll get there together. Where were we? SNL. SNL. The holy grail of comedy. The intersection of music, art, sketches, and politics. Fusing together like a Doctor Who reference I can't make since I don't watch the show. If Monty Python is the Beatles and Saturday Night Live is the Rolling Stones of the comedy world. A formidable giggle powerhouse churning out the biggest stars who get their break in the fast-paced world of weekly writing and performing, solidifying them as legends who paid their dues and went on to be the few A-list celebrities known more for laughter than for tears. And right in the middle of it all was Jimmy Fallon trying to tear it all down.
I bought it here before.
We'll have more product in the spring.
Yeah, I got a guy who's been bitten by a big rattlesnake at the Leatherman shop.
If the group gets separated, where's the rendezvous point?
By his love for sweet wine and doggery.
I've got my Jack Spade bag packed already.
Let me back up a bit. There's a thing in SNL, an all-live television called breaking, short for breaking character. If it occurs on stage in a play, either by laughing or forgetting a line, Often a person offstage can yell at the actor, allowing them to try and reset and prevent the audience from having too much of the illusion shattered before their very eyes. In TV, it can be especially awkward, as it's also being recorded live and while people are laughing at home. And SNL is considered some of the most golden moments of the show. The GOATs, all taken too early from this world like Jim Belushi, Chris Farley, or Phil Hartman, were renowned for their ability to make other cast members break.
What I've heard, you're using your paper not for writing, but for rolling doobies.
They performed comedy on such a high level that they rose beyond the skills of their other cast members and became too funny for even those around them to maintain composure. The art of comedy, as explained by contemporaries who had witnessed this feat, is often one of reverence. The brilliance of a jester so skilled that even fellow comedians, who were often highly competitive and petty of each other's talent, would be powerless to resist. The phenomenon is so treasured that it was even immortalized in a later cast member's Lonely Island song, "And That's When You Break." That's not Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy didn't elevate the material to such a level that his co-stars couldn't contain themselves. Jimmy just laughed at his own performance or lines. Jimmy broke at other people's talent constantly, which would derail scenes. Jimmy broke at his own fuck-ups. Jimmy broke and broke and broke, and really became more memorable for coming across as a self-absorbed piece of shit who thought he was the funniest cast member to ever appear on the show. He would also be immortalized for this, instead in an episode of Family Guy.
And this is for laughing and looking at the camera during every sketch you've ever been in. Who do you think you are, Carol Burnett? You think because she did it, it's okay for you? You haven't earned what she's earned, buddy.
And see, I didn't know anything about this guy, or his hard work, or his dreams, or his background when I saw him suddenly joining one of my favorite TV shows. So maybe that's where it all started. Behind the scenes was apparently an entirely different story. Jimmy was an alcoholic, and as a result would be very difficult to work with. The hours required to both write, rehearse, and star in SNL are notoriously long. Many of the cast members would also party after they clocked out, leading to an atmosphere similar to that of working at a nightclub. Jimmy's dance with the bottle would cost him friendships, and because he was often hungover for his performances, this was supposedly the cause for half of his presence and breaking during taping. And then after he left, entered a dull couple of decades for the show. Sure, we got some incredible classics and another collection of the stars of tomorrow filling the bill, but compared to the years prior, it never seemed to catch up to its former glory days, and I'd argue never has. And no, that's not all Jimmy Fallon's fault. I mean, because curses aren't real.
Magic isn't real, you idiot. Read a book. Magic isn't real, you idiot. Read a book.
Although he did almost suffer his own, people who leave SNL typically go in one of two directions. Either superstardom back when comedies actually went neck and neck with other Hollywood blockbusters, and not just as a miniature side scene in Marvel films to break up the tension in battles. You either became a Will Ferrell, or you starred in a few movies before starring in a few TV shows before starring in a few reality shows before everyone forgot who you were. And Fallon almost went in that direction. Not at first. Immediately after Saturday Night Live, he landed a major 2-film deal to lead in blockbuster films. First, the American remake of Taxi, co-starring alongside Queen Latifah. While not a complete bomb after the international box office returns, it wasn't necessarily a smash hit, and critics panned it as cliched and predictable.
Don't this shit make a nigga wanna Don't this shit make a nigga wanna
In the face.
Next was Fever Pitch, which experienced the same box office and critical reception, not solidifying Jimmy Fallon as a Hollywood lead, and you only really get a few shots. He would go on to star in the romantic comedy Bridesman alongside Drew Barrymore, which did better commercially than either of the first two, but was so forgettable that you probably think I made it up. Which I did. The movie was called Wedding Date, and it was with Deborah Messing. Or maybe I made that up, and it was really called Bridgeman. Unfortunately, we just don't have the technology to find out, so you have to assume all are wrong, or right. Then came his second big break. Conan O'Brien, the undisputed GOAT, don't at me, was stepping up to replace Jay Leno on The Tonight Show, leaving his slot open for a new host. Using his connections at NBC, and surprisingly amount of grace left with Lorne Michaels who endorsed him, Fallon auditioned for the position. While studio executives thought he was, quote, too wholesome for late night television, the scales eventually tipped in his favor, and he started his career in late night.
And now,
host, Jimmy Fallon!
It was a mess. Clearly lacking the skills required to interview people, Fallon would often awkwardly laugh without his guests making a joke, a glitch that has infected him to this day.
Talking about where are we? Where are we and what town?
We're in Big Sur.
Oh, right, but are you in a cabin somewhere?
Yes.
Sorry. And so you go out to walk the dog?
No.
It's cool.
I sort of...
Do they allow dogs at the hotel?
Aren't you supposed to let people talk on the show?
He couldn't nail down what the format should be, often changing up the routine between sketches and musical performances, with ratings dropping significantly from those of Conan. Eventually, he would turn to the blood of youth, sacrificing a digital goat in the altar of the dark web by combining social media interactions with sketches designed to go viral on the internet. The crossover actually worked, and it turned the ratings around. Jay Leno, a bastard in his own right, would bizarrely return to his original slot, bumping Conan out until his retirement, leaving Jimmy Fallon as the logical conclusion to take over The Tonight Show. He had gone from a dorky teenager doing his best Adam Sandler impression of "they're all gonna laugh at you" in his bedroom to Johnny fucking Carlson. And it worked. Jay Leno's ratings have been dropping after all the controversy surrounding his retirement / booting Conan out. Older audiences weren't paying the bills, and Fallon's combination of things like lip-sync battles, box of lies, and hashtags pulled in the critical younger demographic that NBC had been craving. He secured the Roots as this in-house band, which not only is one hell of a get considering that Black Thought has to be one of the top 10 greatest MCs of all time, and Questlove is the greatest drummer in all of hip-hop history. Incidentally, And Then You Shoot Your Cousin, which came out the same year, would be their last studio album ever. So maybe the first real evil committed by Jimmy Fallon was robbing us all of more of their music. But that's petty, because they've always appeared to be having a blast on the show, and who is anyone to take away artists having the time of their lives and being paid well in the process? But not everything was perfect. Jimmy once again seemed to be struck with a notable problem. Despite having done late night for years, his ability to interview guests was still a struggle. A good interviewer, after all, is a good layup player, not the superstar. They're supposed to carry the conversation, avoid dead air, and make the guests come across as the funny one. And in that, Jimmy just always tries too hard.
He did the touch me.
Dude, how'd you pass the bar exam?
Lavishing praise on millionaire superstars who most likely already have egos inflated more than Steve Bannon's liver, to the point of making things awkward. Laughing so generously at moments that would become profoundly awkward for both the guests and the audience. Constantly trying so hard to please everyone, which, knowing now where he came from, kind of makes sense. He worshipped comedians and movie stars his whole life, and now he had this job sitting face to face with them every night. How could Heracles not fawn over the gods when standing at the gates of Mount Olympus? And it would be easy enough to say that they were the only gods he truly worshipped, but they came second to the lord of public perception, the desire to maintain his position, to be viewed as one of them, the gods, required his TV show and in turn his viewers. So Jimmy Fallon quickly became known as the desperate clown seeking validation from his graders, until they shit on him.
This is the greatest show on television because there is no host in late night that pretends to care the way you do.
Thank you.
And I love that. And I love that so much. Oh, no.
Thank you.
I mean, no one captures phoniness the way you do. You prove that tall, handsome white men can make it in show business. Yeah.
Steve Martin and Martin Short were the Poseidon and Apollo of the comedy world. Indisputable legends, virtually devoid of controversies and beloved by generations. And they clocked Jimmy a mile away. He laughed the whole incident off, but it did rounds on social media, and for the first time, the lovable goofball suddenly was being seen in a very different light. A light that Jimmy had worked harder on curating than anything else. A big reason why so many people came to love Jimmy Fallon was that he styled himself as politically neutral. The centrist of late-night hosts, often doing monologues surrounding current events like his contemporaries, but rarely taking a political position in one direction or another. During the 2007 writer's strike, he didn't march in picket lines or use his platform to support their struggle.
I need my writers. I need them real bad.
Unlike Stephen Colbert or Seth Meyers or Conan O'Brien, who were committed Democrats often speaking up about liberal causes, Conan was such an outspoken advocate for the writers' union and standing up for his workers that when he was tasked to return to late night despite the strike going on, he hilariously would just eat up airtime by spinning a coin endlessly, showing the value that the writers brought to the show.
Did you just boo me?
In contrast, Jimmy Fallon came across as remarkably politically neutral in a world where completely avoiding politics is nearly impossible.
This is working for other people. Maybe we should step into the anti-Trump lane and get in on this.
It's just not what I do. I think it'd be weird for me to start doing it now. I don't really even, care that much about politics. I gotta be honest. I love pop culture more than I love politics.
That was until September 15th, 2016, the night of the hair. This was at the height of the 2016 presidential race, one that at the time seemed like it was becoming more and more difficult for Donald Trump to win. The popularity of Obama was assumed to be transferring to Hillary. Donald was already embroiled in numerous controversies and later have a recording leak of him admitting to sexual assault. Not that it was the first time Trump had been accused of it. After all, this man up to this point has over 25 women who have accused him of various forms of sexual assault and rape. His image was revolting to liberal eyes. And there he was, sitting across from the talk show host known for praising his guests. Desperate to maintain supreme neutrality, Jimmy didn't lavish praise on Trump, but gave him one of the most softball interviews he'd received in the election cycle. That's okay. No real harm done. You're not a political guy, Jimmy. You're the breaker. You're the wholesome one. You were just sitting across from an evil racist and you did what you were expected to. Not controversial in the slightest.
I gotta say, probably 8 months ago, if I said your name running for president, it would get a laugh. And then all of a sudden, you started seeing a switch. And I said your name and people go, oh, what? And there was a real switch. And the same thing about Hillary Clinton.
Just cut to commercial and life goes on. But alas, there it was, staring at him in the face. One of life's greatest mysteries, the Voynich manuscript of plumage. The question everyone had wondered, and it was inches from his palm. The toupee of the Covenant was staring him right in the face, and he couldn't resist its power.
You say yes? Go ahead. With my hairspray.
Now, to be completely fair, this moment did not change the course of human history. Yes, it humanized a monster. Yes, it dominated the news cycle and made a lot of people see Trump in a much softer light than it did before. But that's not why he won the election. Hillary Clinton, being a war criminal who had decimated Libya, previously one of the richest countries in Africa, wasn't even what did it. A combination of factors, including the assumption that voters in the Rust Belt would swing for her the way they did for Obama when she never campaigned there, was a profoundly unlikable candidate, and generally didn't capture the same hope or energy that Obama had, were much bigger factors. But it did drop a bomb on Fallon's career. He was no longer seen as an enlightened nothing burger on politics. He was either a collaborator with the bad orange man, or a useful idiot who didn't realize how much damage 3 seconds would do to the fate of the world. He tried apologizing on his show and releasing statements, but once Trump won the election, and liberals and Democrats were looking for anything to blame other than the fact that neoliberal policies keep exacerbating wealth inequality and America's hyper-capitalism is spiraling towards total failure, he was one of the excuses. He would try to save face by suddenly going hard. And by hard, I mean Al Pacino's ability to impregnate someone without Viagra.
As for Oklahoma, look at it. It looks like a Trump wig that Texas is wearing, so I basically won there too.
Making more political jokes aimed at Trump during his administration, focusing more on liberal issues, and siding more with what was expected of him. To be one of the fellow late-night hosts that's a good liberal, they'll stand up for LGBTQ+ people to the extent that it's commercially safe.
First time a drag queen has ever been put on the cover of...
A drag queen? A drag queen! I am the queen of drag!
They'll say just vote, and they'll support democratic initiatives like getting vaccinated, effectively being the political equivalent of Dr. Strangelove, if it was directed by Seth Green. And that seemed like a safer position for Fallon. He recovered, but he also wasn't politically bulletproof anymore. He was one of the liberal elites now. Even though politically he was as flaccid as Robert De Niro trying to impregnate, and so as performative progressives often do, he was cancelled by his past. You see, comedy changes. What was considered funny or edgy at one point in history can haunt your career in the future. And the foundation of Jimmy's career was actually based on one of the most controversial impressions he ever did, his Chris Rock. You see, Jimmy wasn't satisfied just doing the racist stereotypes. He had to go full method acting.
Not a lot of black folks on the show. Right. Not a lot of black folks on the show. You know why? Because black folks don't like to answer questions. Oh, they want to be millionaires, but you got to ask that kind of questions like, in 1981, how many grams of crack did Rick James smoke when he recorded Super Freak?
If your method was being a Klansman, yes, Jimmy Fallon did full blackface. The modern minstrel show. And who are we kidding? This isn't cringe for modern audiences. This was never okay, at any point in history. The history of blackface in America was to dehumanize black Americans, to ridicule their features and make them appear more like animals.
It objectifies African Americans and distances them from their humanity.
To justify their continued oppression through the history of the United States up until this day. So yeah, fuck him for doing this. He apologized and tried to make amends, but it wasn't even a one-off. He had done this character multiple times. Following the murder of George Floyd, Jimmy would apologize formally for the sketch and contributing to the dehumanization of black Americans. He would eventually bring on a variety of guests to discuss racial issues in America, such as Phoebe Robinson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He would learn about his whiteness for the first time from Robin DiAngelo.
Well, the term white fragility, did you coin that term? Did you come up with that, or is that it?
I did.
What does it mean for exactly?
And don't get me wrong, personal growth is awesome and evolving is great, but doing it as a form of atonement because you got caught being a pretty hardcore racist when, I mean, at the end of the day, not a thing that you could have just learned by talking to any of your various black coworkers or colleagues or writers or just any person in your life up to this point. But it seemed on the surface like enough work was being done, even though some could actually have been done to increase the amount of black people, say, working at NBC or the writer's room. But on the surface, Jimmy was mostly a good boy again, a good lib. Ready to stand up for a cause, as long as that just means changing your social media avatar to a black square. If you wanted to do more activism than that, you're gonna have to sweeten the deal with something a lot more non-fungible. January 11th, 2022. Paris Hilton is the guest. Lots they could be talking about. Is she still pretending to be a DJ at this point, or selling something, no doubt? But no. What's this? She wants to talk about art, and she's brought some to show the rest of the class. It's a very generic-looking monkey, an ape to be precise.
I got an ape too, because I saw you on the show with People, and you said you got a MoonPay, so I went and I copied you and did the same thing.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
This is your
mine.
ape.
A bored ape. Oh, and look, Jimmy has one too. They're both showing them off. How neat. I guess they just love modern art of the exceptionally average variety. But wait, there's more. For you see, they're not actually holding up art they like. They're holding up a physical representation of a digital object that can only be purchased through cryptocurrency, a non-fungible token, or NFT. You see, one of the great promises the internet had was unlimited free information and media, that people would be able to share the sum total of human knowledge and art and music and expression with one another, in a really cyberpunk fuck the corporations who try to profit off our creation kind of way. But since about 5 companies bought and control the majority of the internet now, something new and dystopian that got introduced is the idea of creating artificial scarcity for an infinitely replicatable JPEG. See, you can right-click and download the bored ape that Paris Hilton and Jimmy Fallon bought. I've done it right here. Here it is. You can pause the video, save the screen, and then even print it at home at no cost at all. But what they're essentially doing a commercial for is the idea of buying this JPEG on the blockchain where only you can own it, where in theory, not even the image itself, but the hyperlink to the image was non-fungible. So you can buy a URL that's registered on the blockchain that will feature a JPEG. Granted, the site hosting it never goes down out of bankruptcy. But in theory, if the internet still exists, there'll be a permanent ledger, so you can sell it to another stooge of the highest variety.
You guys know what that is? Yeah, like 12 people know what it is. Well, I barely know. Can you explain what an NFT is?
Well, it's a non-fungible token.
Non-fungible.
If all of this sounds like the most insane, nightmarish concept in the world, that only heartless, greedy capitalists of the worst variety who despise both art, creation, and humanity itself conceive of, you're not alone. Most people did back in 2022.
NFTs, the latest supercharged FOMO product to come out of the blockchain ecosystem, and it's making a lot of people very rich. Well, to be more precise, it's making a lot of scammers very rich, because unless you got in early on the CryptoPunks or Bored Apes, the chances of hitting it big in the NFT space are next to none, and most have seen their Ethereum literally go up in smoke.
But a worthless bean needs suckers to pour fiat currency into something to give it value. And all that really needs is a few wholesome, friendly celebrities who everyone trusts, like the exact image Jimmy Fallon had curated. So he not only promoted Bored Ape NFTs with Paris Hilton, but he actually went as far as changing his whole social media handles to Fallon.eth, based on the Ethereum token, and would push numerous other projects. Here's Jimmy on April 19th, 2022, posting a picture of another NFT project called Moonbirds with the message, "Fly, Moonbirds, fly," which magically also made the project peak at its value at 38.5 Ether, or $183,000 per hyperlink, meaning that a lot of people must have suddenly bought it thinking they were going to have a safe investment, much like the Bored Ape Yacht Club monkeys. But fast forward to today, and it's lost 90.8% of its value since the peak, one appearing mysteriously close to Jimmy and Paris Hilton's push, and a lot of the apes are actually now completely worthless. Moonbirds, on the other hand, must have flied into a window and broke their necks because the project is doing even worse, now worth 98.6 of its original value since the Jimmy peak push, meaning anyone who bought it and is still holding one today lost about $180,000. Whether it was one of the many exposés that came out about how the Bored Ape Yacht Club logo is suspiciously like the Nazi Waffen SS one, with specifically 18 teeth, a common number for white supremacists, or numbers of other conspiracies and racist connections to the project, or just the fact that the fad of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a hyperlink to a JPEG that people can download for free, but aren't really because of how hideous all machine learning replicated art is, the fad of NFTs passed, and it wasn't safe for Jimmy Fallon to brand himself as one of their most mainstream hucksters next to Matt Damon. So he simply changed all his social media from the owl logo and the .eth to the plain old Jimmy Fallon. Outside of some pending lawsuits, he mostly got away with being one of the most prominent NFT pushers on late night TV with barely any criticism.
Next up, we have fact. NFTs are the latest Ethereum-powered cryptocurrency craze. Fiction, if you repeat that sentence to your grandfather, his head will explode.
Now, you could make a very strong argument that there are strict FEC regulations in place that state that public figures, including TV hosts, have to disclose any material connections to brands or products they endorse. They mandate that any paid promotion or sponsorship on broadcast television must be clearly disclosed. Jimmy Fallon not only promoted the Bored Apes on live TV, but also MoonPay, a cryptocurrency market that Paris Hilton has direct investments in.
Through MoonPay.
Okay, there it is. There it is.
You know what I'm talking about? This is real. MoonPay, which is, I'm figuring, I did my homework.
Okay.
MoonPay, which is like PayPal, but for crypto.
It's also unclear if Jimmy was gifted a moonbird or a Bored Ape, like many other celebrities had been, essentially being given a token worth $300,000 and then told to harmlessly promote it like you just think it's really cool. So maybe they all thought it was harmless? It's crypto after all, the wild west of scamming. So do FEC regulations apply to technology so advanced and revolutionary that it's transformed the ability to right-click save into a divorce machine?
Too bad if you don't like it, 'cause haters gonna hate.
And you can just tell what a little worm he is when he actually comes close to being called out on his shit.
Alexa, how bad are Amazon working conditions?
Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. Here we go. All right,
No,
I have
no,
to.
Alexa. No, Alexa. Alexa, what is union
No, Alexa,
busting?
this is me time now. Alexa, stop. Stop, please. Alexa, please listen to me.
In this clip, John is obviously having some fun, having a laugh, as the British would say, at Jimmy's expense. But he raises a very serious point multiple times that clearly Jim is petrified by. It's one thing to lose the public's love or trust, but it's an entirely different one to lose corporations. After all, they can weather you through the hard times if you're willing to do a little atonement. Oh, my owl's gone. Did he ever pay anyone back? Does he still have them?
I couldn't even do that to my audience tonight. Are you kidding me? I could doubt I would make money off the NFTs.
Or did he set them free, cashing out on the backs of the labor of his fans and cast? Speaking of cast, the first cracks in the dam started to form on May 2nd, 2023, when the second major writer's strike to happen under his professional career took place. due to the rampant abuse, underpaid staff, poor contract jobs, outsourcing more and more work to AI, and the copyright ramifications of all that. Thousands of writers took to the streets. In solidarity, the Actors Guild joined them, and soon the biggest names in hell yeah workers' rights were marching. There was Zaddy himself, Bill Nye the Worker Guy, and Jimmy Fallon. Okay, reminding again for a second here, Conan and John Oliver and Seth Meyers all showed enormous support for the workers and writing staff, offering to pay for additional weeks of their salaries, or in the case of Oliver, fundraising through live comedy shows to help pay their wages. You see, despite being rich, famous, successful, comparable in every way to Jimmy, they still saw their writers as necessary parts of their workplace, and agreed that if they were well-fed and doing awesome and can afford first-class flights everywhere, that every struggling writer should have more rights enshrined in their goddamn contracts. Jimmy Fallon said publicly that he wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for his writers, and that he supports them all the way. Then the next day was called out by one of his head writers, Sarah Kobos, for missing the writers' meeting where they were told they weren't getting paid anymore. Quote, "At a meeting Jimmy wasn't even at. We are told NBC decided to stop paying us after this week and end our health insurance after this month if the strike is ongoing. They won't even tell us if we will technically be furloughed, just active employees who aren't paid." And the dam had cracked. Water was pouring in everywhere in the form of online disgust, cancellations, hypocrisy maxing, and of course, Jimmy immediately realizing that saying you support the writers while in actuality thinking of them as expendable as the social mores over minstrel shows, immediately reversed course.
We were told we were going to get paid until this coming Friday, and that we would have health insurance through the end of the month. NBC will pay us through the end of this week and next week, so 2 weeks, and that Jimmy will be paying us for a third week so that we will get 3 weeks pay.
He not only stated emphatically that he'd pay for the next couple of weeks, but joined the great PR of podcasting with people who care more about these issues than you, so you can make it appear like you're actually doing the bare minimum for the standards of the time. For an A-list TV celebrity who has potentially millions of dollars in undisclosed crypto earnings. Which brings us all back to one of the most haunting episodes in television history. DJ Khaled's birthday celebration. The maklube, the candles, the laughter, and the wholesome meal shared between two best friends. What were these two men hiding? Every single frame of this macabre spectacle being haunted by a grim reality hiding just beneath the surface. And that's when it all clicked. This episode aired on November 22nd, 2024. DJ Khaled, like Fallon, was someone else who held and promoted the Bored Ape Yacht Club. His personal token being number 112224, the exact same date as when this originally aired. And it gets even stranger, my friends, because the value of Jimmy Fallon's Bored Ape sits at, I kid you not, 11.2224 Ethereum. Okay, I have to stop this right now. It's just really too easy to make up anything you want on the internet and then have it spread, and I really want to prevent a certain percentage of conspiracy theories or cults that will arise from this to stop right now. None of that is true. It was just something I completely made up just to build suspense. Well, I'll explain more later, but the fact that both DJ Khaled and Jimmy Fallon own and promoted Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs, that's true. And the reality is that most likely they just lost a huge amount of their value, anywhere between 30 and in some cases 1% of the originally held value. So yes, it was a massive scam, but again, one that you could accuse Eminem or Post Malone or Paris Hilton of equally participating in. Yet, are they evil incarnate? Is there something that makes Jimmy Fallon particularly evil? Answering that would become much simpler as the final remaining pieces of the dam shatter and the reality of Jimmy Fallon's abuse returned to salt the earth.
Dire mental and physical impacts from the mistreatment and stress, a revolving door of yes-men showrunners and ineffective HR made it impossible for employees to enact change even when they did speak up. One former employee told Rolling Stone, "Mentally, I was in the lowest place of my life. I didn't want to live anymore. I thought about taking my own life all the time." After the expose was published, representatives from NBC released a rather hollow defense of the program.
A nightmare. A toxic work environment, mandatory cry rooms. Multiple exposés came out with interviews from former staff describing a tyrannical work environment where Air Jimmy can explode in anger at any given time. often yelling at his staff.
5 big booms!
Okay.
Boom!
Okay. Yeah, boom. Yeah, 5 booms. Yeah, okay. So now it's Halloween.
Many of whom had to seek out mental health counseling as a result of how intense it was. Once again, accusations of alcoholism, showing up to rehearsals drunk, and erratic behavior began to dominate the headlines. Finally, the sordid truth of what a monster Jimmy was behind the lens was seeing the light of day, and he would finally have to reckon with the inevitable public backlash. And, well, yeah, nothing really happened. He apologized, they went through some showrunners, but Jimmy's ability to avoid any real responsibility for any of his shitty actions once again prevailed, as his ratings never suffered too damaging a hit, and the Enlightened Centrism Express makes another pit stop. Maybe it's because no one stands up for one another, speaks out about one another. Why do bad men have great things happen to them? How do they keep getting away with it? How is there no justice in this world? It's 5 a.m. You wake up from yet another poor sleep, the smell of cheap cigarettes and whiskey staining the morning dew. Shortly after heating up a can of beans and the black sludge that passes for coffee, you close out your campsite to hit the open road. You're not sure how many days you have left, so you set out to make the most of your final breaths. After traveling through perilous terrain and avoiding thieves or great beasts looking to eat you, you arrive to meet Rainsfall, the chief of the Tapiti tribe. An outlaw yourself, no stranger to the oppression of state enforcers, you find a kind of kinship with him and his son Eagle Flies. Their people have been facing genocide at the hands of the new forming US government for generations, and your lifelong friend and outlaw partner Dutch is fixing to help them fight the US Army. But you've come to learn that Dutch isn't a noble man, that he's a scoundrel, willing to lie, cheat, and steal and kill to get his way. You weren't much different, but being at death's door has changed things. You know if you add fuel to Rainfall's son Eagle Fly's desire for war, that it'll destroy what remains of their people. You know that Dutch doesn't care if they live or die. So what do? This is the world of Red Dead Redemption 2, a cinematic video game by Rockstar that is so groundbreakingly massive it allows the player to completely escape into a different time period. You can spend months just becoming an expert poker player, become the most feared bounty hunter in the land, or just slowly transport goods on a rickety cart for sick and dying children. The choice is yours. How you play determines how others around you will react and behave when they encounter you. Are you a dreaded outlaw, a two-timing scoundrel without true grit, or one of the few noble heroes who can see right from wrong and ultimately will do and say and act upon what is just, not just because of how others will treat you, but because it could lead to a better world even if you only have moments left to appreciate it. A code of ethics. And it works particularly well because of its depth. Playing the game as a monster as you treat it equally as one back. People will pretend like their hotel rooms are full or their bars are closed. Conversely, if you go out of your way to say, save a German family early in the game, its tale travels throughout the towns and at the most random moment comes back to reward you in ways you never expected. Then, when you least expect it, your character will randomly collapse and discover that he's dying of tuberculosis, making mortality suddenly feel like a visceral part of the experience, even though you probably had to die about 1,000 times to get that far in the game. And suddenly the idea of accruing as much gold from robbing trains or buying the most expensive horse seems completely trivial. What comes into focus is how you'll be remembered. What legacy will you leave behind? How did your presence help or hurt the world and those you love?
Guess what? I won.
Yes, no, we won.
That year, I won.
By November 22nd, 2024, the Gaza Strip in Palestine had endured the equivalent of 3 atomic bombs worth of explosives dropped upon it. A year of forced starvation with children drinking sewage and eating garbage to try and survive. A near complete destruction of schools, hospitals, churches, and mosques. While thousands upon thousands of kids, mothers, sisters, brothers, fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, great-great-grandfathers lie dead underneath the rubble. The Lancet currently estimates that there is over 150,000 dead civilians, the majority of whom are women and children. And all of us for the rest of our lives will ask ourselves, if we did enough. And the answer is no, we didn't. And Jimmy Fallon has on DJ Khaled on his show this far into it. A man whose parents were refugees from Palestine to America. Someone who's become one of the largest celebrities in the United States, living out the American dream just like anybody else. Like, no one is expecting Jimmy to scream from the river to the sea or anything. But even saying the word Palestinian, neither of them could do it. They ate the national dish of Palestine, maklube, right there in front of the eyes of the world, and just said that it was an Arab dish, and then moved right on to commercial break.
It's called maklube. It's an Arabic dish called maklube. My mom makes it for me.
An estimated 72 Palestinian women and children died that day from US-made bombs dropping on them, while Khaled and Jimmy pretended like it wasn't happening. His forced and fake laughter no longer felt annoying, but now it was somehow slowed and echoing in the background of a big crushed soundscape, layered with screams and distortions of horrors beyond comprehension.
So is that it? Beneath the abusive workplace, the rejection of labor rights, the creepy obsession with being loved, the alcoholism, the not standing up for his workers or going to any strikes, the cryptocurrency scams, the NFT con artist stuff, and I mean, does that make him evil incarnate? I mean, Charlie Chaplin married a 16-year-old. He's way worse.
After all, couldn't his entire story apply to other people? Like, say, Jimmy Kimmel? An unfunny white douchebag who started out in a sketch comedy show, made racist jokes and laughed at his own sketches, went viral for doing blackface, moved on to late-night comedy with a rocky start, but eventually broke out and had success as he slowly rebranded into liberal politics and anti-Trump routines? Known behind the scenes for his difficult behavior and publicly supporting Israel numerous times through a genocide without ever standing up for Palestinians? Maybe it's kind of the big problem with all of them. John Oliver spoke up, Hassan Minhaj spoke up, but the majority of entertainers, the majority of musicians, did not.
I think one of the biggest problems with Jimmy Fallon is the same problem with all of us, in that sometimes we don't do what's right or we don't stand up for a just cause unless it's demanded of us.
And maybe that's the most horrifying thing of all, that Jimmy Fallon's true evil lies in the banality of liberal apathy. Jimmy Fallon does the bare minimum in what's most safe and comfortable, and as he's pulled in one direction, I'm sure he'd prefer to never have to speak about anything political. He'd prefer to just be endlessly loved by his audience, by his cast and crew, by his fellow performers, but most importantly, by the world. To live amongst the stars he spent his entire life worshipping. And Jimmy's always been a leech attached to the rest of the cast, draining the humor and love from the performance while trying to live off the nutrients of more famous cast members. He went from being an intestinal worm living off the remnants of Will Ferrell to interviewing Will Ferrell in the debut episode of his talk show, never anywhere close to his talent, but able to bask in it nonetheless. He's a living representation of the infestation and disease that is tolerance and apathy for the wicked.
Jimmy Fallon would never change unless there was immense public pressure to do so. And I mean, the same thing applies to so many different celebrities who aren't really going to take a stance or do anything for a cause unless that's what's asked of them. There's a difference between the ability to cancel someone because they're terrible, and to be totally honest, Jimmy seems totally impervious to all of that, so we are the ones who give these people all this power. By being their fans, by watching them, by sharing their videos, by loving their content. We are the ones that prop them up to become these rich, famous celebrities that have everything, and if they're not willing to actually do the bare minimum by the standards of the time, we should be demanding better.
Dude, I really thought it was over. That was it. I go,
You're canceled.
That's it, I'm canceled. Yeah, I started my own hashtag Jimmy Fallon is over party.
Yeah.
I was like, I had a good run, you know, I had 10 years in the business.
On February 5th, 2025, after Joe Biden had been defeated and Donald Trump once again came into office, a lot of late-night hosts must have gotten a memo because they were finally allowed to say the word Gaza on air. Shortly after taking office, Donald met with the war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House to announce the final stages of the complete takeover of the Palestinian Strip. Proving that things can always be worse under his command, Trump suggested the US would be taking over the Gaza Strip and turning it into a casino resort.
And I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
On cue, Jimmy Kimmel and others would push back by making dad jokes about an ongoing genocide. and Fallon was no different.
Trump wants to take over Greenland, Canada, and now the Gaza Strip. He's like everyone at 2 a.m. drunk ordering off Amazon. I'm gonna add Gaza Strip to it, the cart. I want Gaza Strip.
At the end of the day, The Tonight Show, like all late-night shows on major television networks, is a corporate product. Much like how Target and Meta pivoted instantly with the times to dropping DEI initiatives and protections for LGBTQ+ people, liberal comedians were more free to criticize US foreign policy if it was happening under Trump. And as milquetoast or as outright revolting as this is depending on your politics, it's safe to say it's the way it'll continue unless something changes. I get that it can be difficult to talk about serious issues. I even delayed bringing it up myself by creating some bizarre crypto conspiracy, because like anyone who considers themselves a comedian, I'd rather make you laugh than cry. It's easier to pretend we're only an election away from things getting better, and mistake penance for real material change. But as much as Jimmy worships the gods, he should remember again that their existence only goes as far as we, the people, believe in them. Old gods become mythological figures, and new ones take their place. Maybe there should be more people willing to do the right thing, like John Oliver, or maybe Hassan Minhaj should be full-time hosting The Daily Show. Or more importantly, maybe they shouldn't be gods at all.
One other thing was that, like, when I was researching this video, I had to watch so many hours of SNL, and then I was watching those old clips with Jimmy Fallon and Horatio Sanz, and I was asking myself, whatever happened to Horatio Sanz?
In August of 2021, a lawsuit was filed against SNL cast member Horatio Sanz for and molesting an underage fan in front of numerous other cast members and celebrities at an SNL after-party. The suit claims that when she was 15, Sanz found her because she was running an SNL fan site and started grooming her, private messaging her, and began a years-long abusive relationship which included sexual exchanges. In September of 2001, when she was 17, Sanz allegedly invited her to an SNL after-party where she drank beer with Jimmy Fallon. According to the suit, he brought her to another party in 2002, which had drugs, numerous celebrities, and cast members, and it was there that it's alleged that Horatio molested her publicly, with, according to the suit, a stunned onlooker exclaiming, "Are you fucking serious?" But no one did anything to stop it. The suit would go on to state that numerous other cast members saw what was happening but said or did nothing. A spokesman for Sanz would state the claims are categorically false, and that the accuser was simply trying to extort money from him. They would eventually reach a settlement out of court for undisclosed terms, and NBC said the organization denied Jane Doe's allegations against the company and asked the court to dismiss the case. The parties have since resolved the matter and moved on. Sanz's lawyer says he continues to deny all the allegations. But an ABC profile on the story in 2023, which included an interview with Jane Doe herself, paint a damning picture.
I had been drinking, he had been plying me with alcohol, but within that context, I consented to kissing him and making out with him at first at that party. The second that I saw that the cast was coming into the party, I became extremely uncomfortable and froze like a deer in headlights and wanted to stop. And Horatio coerced me repeatedly to keep going with him.
Do you think it was clear to him that you didn't want to participate?
1000%.
In it, she provides photographic evidence of her with various cast members at events, including with Lorne Michaels, Tina Fey, and Jimmy Fallon. She also provided screenshots of the alleged text exchange between herself and Horatio Sanz to ABC News. "Dude, you g***ed me," Jane Doe wrote. "Do you feel differently now about being a 32-year-old man hooking up with a 16-year-old girl? 'Cause I do." According to the text records, Sanz replied, "Of course. I've always felt terrible about that. I didn't know what I was doing. I never intended to g*** you." Later in the exchange, Jane Doe wrote, "Like it would at this point be irresponsible of me not to me too you." To which, according to the records, he replied, "You can. It happened. I'm very sorry, and that would suck, but it's your story. I swear on a stack of improv books I'm a different person. I was a depressed and miserable drunk. At the Tracy party, I really tried to fix what I'd done." Despite this, Horatio Sanz and NBC settled a lawsuit with no admission of wrongdoing. She was a Jimmy Fallon fanatic, who supposedly received a thank you email from both Horatio and Jimmy for creating a fan page for Fallon. He apparently knew she was a high school student at the very parties where she claims Jimmy was drinking beer with her, and once it was apparent that she was being groomed by Horatio, did nothing about it. Neither did anyone else who was aware. The whole story had the potential to damage the entire SNL brand, and for very good fucking reason. And eventually just got settled out of court and was never spoken of again. If it's all true, it would be one of the biggest scandals and cover-ups in NBC history. But it's one that you, like myself prior to researching this documentary, probably weren't even fully aware of, let alone how grotesque the details were. And if it did happen, well, the ability to back up her story and take down that monster lies in Jimmy Fallon's hands. It may permanently damage his reputation, his career, not to mention NBC, and the entire SNL franchise, but it would be the right thing to do. The whole evil triumphs when good men do nothing may sound like a cliche, but it's the exact reality that Jimmy Fallon lives with every single day. Meanwhile, this year, Horatio Sanz appeared at the Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary special. So again, that's probably why we shouldn't have gods at all. And yeah, fuck Jimmy Fallon.
I heard the revolution coming, you should spread the news.
So I don't want to end this on a complete downer. I'm a lifelong fan of comedy, and can really appreciate how hard it is to do sketch comedy as a genre. Everyone knows instantaneously when a bit isn't working, and you just have to sit there, cringe, and wait for it to pass. And part of growing up is realizing that a lot of people suck and hero worship comes back to bite you. I'd argue that The Chappelle Show is the funniest sketch program of all time, but we all know what happened to Dave Chappelle.
I'm Team Turf.
All right, boys.
If you're looking for some classic series, I'd still recommend Key and Peele and some lesser known ones like Caution May Contain Nuts and Picnic Face. And without calling them gods, because they're really just talented and funny humans, if you haven't already, it might be the time to let the bass guitar intro take over and consume the Canadian sillies of Kids in the Hall.
God fucking damn it.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwick, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons. Head on down to patreon.com/theserfs. That's patreon.com/theserfs.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.